play us in? Who's gonna introduce yourself if you'd like?
Yeah, so I'm Laura. I'm a sophomore at BHS, and I'm gonna play two pieces. They're both by Tchaikovsky. One of them is January, and one of them is July.
Oh, nice.
Thank you.
Is there time for another piece? It's 2 minutes long.
Oh, I think so.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
know a lot more people have joined. If you want to do a, remind us who you are again.
Yeah, so I'm Laura and I go to BHS and I'm a sophomore there.
Awesome. Thanks again. I've noticed you didn't have any sheet music, and now I'm duly impressed.
Oh,
Everything's memorized. It's great. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to go back to my little screen share again to start the meeting, if I can figure out how to do that. Let's see here.
You should be able to share your screen now, Joe. I turned it off for a second.
Oh, I see. All right. So welcome. We had this logo made this past year by Gotham City Graphics, Amy Radcliffe. So just sharing that real quick. We'll use that in our lawn signs when we eventually get that pulled off, and in other materials. I think it might be in the minutes from time to time. So just an introduction to what the NPA is all about. This is from our bylaws. It's a lot of words, but our purpose is to provide this safe and welcoming forum for you to share your voice, and so we can all learn from your voice and the voices of everyone in our community. We want to cultivate this involvement by a diverse spectrum of this community. To varying degrees, we're successful, but we try to do that, and we will be reaching out in various ways. Email is one of them, but we're also working on using bulletin boards and so forth to get people into our meeting and to see all the good things that are going on in the community. And our goal is, of course, to operate in a manner that models respectful, inclusive, and culturally and economically aware practices. So we want to keep this a safe space again. And so we'll be doing that to the best of our ability with this Zoom format. This link is public, but Liam is helping us out with keeping things moderated. So I think what he told me tonight is the plan is to, during this public forum or beginning phase, everyone can be on the screen share kind of enabled mode, the panelist mode. And we'll later on, as we move into our agenda, we'll switch to more of a webinar mode where you raise your hand to provide, comments and participate in the meeting more. But we do have a nice slate of participants today, so I think I recognize a lot of the names, so I'm not too worried. But we need to be mindful of that. And I'll just say to close this out that we aim to be nonpartisan and not make an endorsement of any political candidates. So that does apply tonight. We'll have a city councilor forum later in the agenda. So these are I just have up the names of our steering committee: Kirsten, Lucia, Billy, myself, Joe, Jillian, Nate, Scott, Andy, and Ben. Almost all of them are on the call right now. So thanks for joining, everybody. And of course, I mentioned Liam. He is our NPA liaison and kind of at the main controls for the Zoom webinar. And thanks to CCTV for recording this and putting it on, I believe, still YouTube in addition to our Zoom stream. And later you can watch it on their website and on their cable access channel. I just made this page up real quick to remind you of how to use the controls. Right now, I think everyone is a presenter, so you'll have different controls. And when you get switched back and forth, there will be a little bit of an interruption, and but it will come back up in the participant mode next. And then, of course, you use the little raise hand button to indicate you would like to, speak for a moment and ask a question or respond to something. So that's what those controls look like. And it will switch modes after our public forum section. I just wanted to give you a reminder that, in case you've forgotten, town meeting day is coming up. I got my ballot, I think yesterday or the day before. The clerk treasurer's website says they expect everyone to have theirs by the 19th, which is tomorrow. So if you don't, it suggested that you contact them to get one. And I put down the ways you can, I just cut and pasted this from the website. Looks like that's not a 0. Oops, sorry. 4:30 p.m. On Monday, March 1st is the last time to use the outdoor drop box. But if you'd like to return by mail, it's actually pretty soon, it's by next Monday. So I'm going to try to do that. But yeah, I'm going to keep bear in mind that if I can't pull it off, I probably want to go ahead and bring it to one of those drop boxes. One of them was at the DPW, which is pretty close to us. So recommend you keep that in mind. The election or the town meeting day questions and everything are coming up very soon. All right. And of course, you can actually drop off at the polling place, which is Burlington Electric, on town meeting day throughout the day. And one last thing, if you're over 70, you can register to get your COVID vaccine. So please do that. I am not over 70 yet, but it seems like it will be soon enough. So, please make your best effort. So I'll move on to the agenda. Thank you, Laura, again for the musical intro. And we're a little bit past the 7:05, but I'd like to begin the public forum now, where you can bring up anything that's on your mind in the community here. And
Joe,
I'll stop sharing.
I'm just going to jump in. This is Kirsten Bohm. I'm also a member of the steering committee here at the Ward 5 NPA. And I just wanted to take a minute to preview our meeting for March, which is also on the 18th of March from 7 to 8:30 p.m. We're going to do something kind of different and exciting at our NPA meeting next month, which is to try to engage in a community discussion early on in the meeting. So after public forum, we'll have about 30 minutes where we're hoping to facilitate a conversation of neighbors with some questions and have you engage and talk to each other. And we've invited a number of our currently elected officials or those who are elected after town meeting day to join us and to help us think about what those questions might be and to listen and to perhaps ask probing questions during that time. So we invite you to join us for that. I think it'll be different and exciting. If you also have a question that you'd like to discuss during that time, you can send it to any of us on the Ward 5 NPA steering committee. Our email addresses are on the CEDO website, and that's always a way you can reach out to any of us. And then during the March 18th meeting, we'll also have an update on the Burlington High School renovation project and a kind of touch base on the Champlain Parkway work with folks from the Pine Street Coalition and DPW joining us. So we hope you can join us on March 18th.
Thanks, Kirsten. Anyone else like to raise anything during the forum section?
Hi, my name's Linda Patterson. I'd like to make a statement. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, hi. I'm a resident of Ward 5 and I have a comment I'd like to make about Burton Corporation's proposed hub, which will, as many of you know, include a 1,500 person concert venue surrounded by 8 neighborhoods. And I'm very concerned because the project is not currently addressing the obvious traffic, safety, and congestion issues prior to opening. I'm not here to articulate a for or against. I'm here to ask that someone get Burton and Burlington to be proactive in mitigating the impacts to our surrounding neighborhoods before we no longer have a voice. For example, 600 cars are estimated for the larger concerts, and Burton only has 426 parking spots. And so we believe that conditions should be required that there will be adequate on-site parking so that there won't be a lot of cars cruising the streets looking for places to park. And in addition to inadequate parking, there is an extreme lack of traffic infrastructure. There are no crosswalks, no shoulders, no designated bike lanes or sidewalks for the 1,500 concert goers to get in and out of Home Avenue and Queen City Park Road 1 out of every 3 nights per year. Burlington, another note, passed the climate emergency declaration in 2019, but the current traffic infrastructure surrounding this proposed hub is completely antithetical to this declaration. We need to be true to the declaration and to require that Burton and Burlington anticipate and mitigate big traffic jams and idling. Another issue is that the police department may be ceasing night shift patrols, and we ask Burlington to assure adequate safety before the doors are open. As many of you know, the current higher ground has an average of, well, it's half the size of the new venue, and it has had an average of 130 police calls in 2019. And I am concerned that there will be a huge spike in police calls from neighbors addressing middle of the night issues. We all want to make sure that this big change can be a win-win, that we don't regret later, that we wish we'd done more. And I do know that the Act 250 hearing is March 10th and our voices can still be heard. But the question is, who can speak up to be sure that Burton Corporation and Burlington are required to have ample on-street parking for all vehicles, safe ingress and egress for all pedestrians and bicyclists, neighbors included, and adequate police presence before construction begins. So please, we ask that you take action to put safety and the environment before profits. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for speaking up, Linda. Okay, I think we might be ready to move on to our next.
Joe, I just wanted to, could I say something?
Oh, yes, Andy.
Andy Simon, I just wanted to point out to people who are interested in transportation issues And maybe some of those issues hadn't been covered in the, I know they haven't been covered in the mayoral debates that I've seen. And there's some good candidate questionnaires on the Burlington Walk Bike Council website, which is burlingtonwalkbike.org. They have mayoral candidate responses to their questions about walking and biking and public transportation in Burlington, and they have city council candidate responses. So that's burlingtonwalkbike.org. If you want to see where the mayoral and city council candidates stand on some of those issues about walking, biking, and public transportation in Burlington. Thanks. I'll put it in the chat as well.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, any other comments during public forum? I think we're staying pretty close to on schedule in that case. Next, we had Chip Mason to talk to us about the city council updates.
Thank you, Joe. Can you hear me okay, everyone? Yes,
Yeah.
Great. Based on the new format, let me first introduce myself. My name is Chip Mason. I am coming to you through your screen from the basement of my home on 33 Scarf Avenue, which is a small street between Home and Pine. I am a city councilor as my second job. My first job, I am an attorney who practices in downtown Burlington. And I live at my house with my wife, and I have two daughters, one who's a freshman in college and a junior at BHS as well. That's not why I was asked to be here, though. I was asked to come and speak to provide an update on issues that have been in front of the city council. I thought, given my 15 minutes, I will sort of speak to at least two issues that I think are front and center before the council. And then if time allows, I'd welcome comments, questions, thoughts from those who are participating. I will start with an issue that is before the council that somewhat got punted. On Monday evening, the council was scheduled to vote on approving, excuse me, the amended and restated development agreement that relates to City Place, which is, for those who may not know, what the former mall in downtown Burlington that is now referred to somewhat jokingly as the Pit. The city sued the developer approximately 6 months ago after the project had been stalled for 5+ years and lots of drama about developer that was in, developer that was out. Nonetheless, the project was not moving forward. The city sued. In essence, our claim was seeking to force the developer to build what I'll say are the public improvements, which basically are the reconnecting the streets of St. Paul Street and Pine Street that were, cut off when the first redevelopment happened 60 years ago. That litigation went into mediation, and over the course of a number of mediation sessions, the city and the developer were able to, in essence, come to what was presented to us as a resolution with some changes to the initial development agreement that was signed back in 2017. And the principal changes that showed up in the amended and restated development agreement were, in essence, upon execution, the developer would, in essence, deed rights to the two streets to the city of Burlington. So, no more in the future when they get to it, the city would own the rights to reconnect St. Paul and Pine Street. And the second was, in essence, a guarantee from SD Ireland, which is one of the company owned by one of the local developers that has come into the project. And in essence, that was a guarantee that if this project did not move forward for any reason, they couldn't get financing, they were, hung up in litigation, what have you, that SD Ireland was agreeing to basically build or reconnect those streets at no cost to the city of Burlington. The third material development that was there was, in essence, a reimbursement of tax revenue of approximately $150,000 a year from the time when the developer went in and took down the parking garage and deconstructed. So depending on when the project moves forward, that was about between a $450,000 or $300,000 reimbursement for lost tax revenue. That, other than those changes, I think there's a little bit of confusion in the public. Other aspects of the development agreement were not touched or reopened. So there were a number, for example, of concessions that were made that were reflected in the initial development agreement that were not touched. Those include, public amenities, a rooftop garden, committing to certain stormwater mitigation efforts on site, LEED gold buildings, all of that stayed the same. In essence, everything else was not reopened. Part of what was in that development agreement were some labor provisions, in essence, ensuring that the contractor paid livable wage, that there were apprentice programs, that priorities were given to, the less privileged women, minority, owned businesses. Those were all labor provisions that were negotiated in 2017 with input from the Trades Council and other groups. That was why, again, and I'll speak without editorializing of my view, it was a little surprising basically on Saturday or Sunday before our vote Monday to have an issue crop up that was going on between the developer and the AFL-CIO. The city was not necessarily directly involved in those conversations, but there was now being put forward a demand from the AFL-CIO that the city should either vote no on the amended and restated development agreement or postpone in order to ensure that agreement could be reached. What happened, so that was a bit of a, I would say as a counselor who's paying attention, that was a surprise on a last minute issue that had not previously been brought up because frankly, it wasn't within the purview of the city or even discussed. So Monday night when we were, the agenda item came up, it became, well, I won't say it became clear. It was apparent that this was an issue that a number of us counselors, needed further time in order to discuss among ourselves and also afford some additional time, hopefully, for the developer and the AFL-CIO to come to agreement. So by an 11-1 vote on Monday evening, the council elected to defer or table that agenda item until basically a time to be set by the mayor. It now appears that that special meeting will be held next Tuesday at 5 o'clock, I believe, is the time that meeting will be held. So I have no other updates on that. I know there are conversations going on that I am not privy to at this point in time, but that is where that agenda item, which has occupied much airspace, currently stands. The other issue from a brief update that was a meeting before, but similarly has occupied significant public attention, relates to the what was called the Public Safety Continuity Plan. And that was the administration's proposal to do three things. One was to increase the number of authorized police officers from the 74 cap that was put in when the budget was passed back in June. That was the proposal was to raise that from 74 to 84. There were also two other components of the continuity plan relating to the hiring of what are called CSLs, which are community service liaisons, not officers, but rather, I would say, people without a weapon, who in essence work for the department and are a liaison. And the other piece of that was the engagement or hiring of community service officers. There was, over the course of 2 meetings and 2 discussions, that plan was very hotly debated. And the ultimate, what was finally passed was a continuity plan that did not have or adopt an increase in the number of authorized officers, but did go forward with the CSLs and the CSOs. There's lots more going on at the council, but I did want to at least start with, I think, what for anyone who's watching the news or reading newspapers or reading Front Porch Forum, those are certainly 2 issues that have occupied much time of the council and at least one will continue. I would say both will continue to be much discussed as we move forward. So with that, I'm at 7:30. Let me stop, and if there are questions either on either of those two matters or anything else, council related that anyone has questions about, I'm happy to answer, and if not, turn it over to our state reps.
Thanks, Chip. Yeah, if anyone would like to ask a question, we have changed over the attendees. Hopefully you didn't get interrupted too long during when Chip was talking, but go ahead and raise your hand if you want to raise a question. I think I see Amanda.
Hi, I just had a question about with the issue of labor coming up with City Place. Do we have a sense of whether or not the unions could actually provide enough laborers to finish this job across the board? Because my understanding from listening to Jane Nodell speak was that there's the potential that we're going to actually have to bring people from out of state,
Yes.
which might diminish the ability of people here to vie for those jobs.
Sure. So all I can say to respond to that, Amanda, I can only report what I've heard. I do not have direct knowledge. I have heard differing information from each side. I have heard, not surprisingly, from the developer and others who support or not going forward, that there are fewer than 300 skilled union contractors in the state of Vermont who would be eligible to qualify, be able to do this work if it were adopted. I have heard on the other side from the AFL-CIO that there are over 1,000 union members. So that is the data I have. Because we did not open the agenda item and invite, there was not an ability to engage in any type of Q&A with either of the people who are putting forth those different numbers. So that is the information I have, and so I don't have a definitive answer to your question as to whether requiring union labor be used would mean we would be going out of state in order to get eligible contractors. And I should also say, here's the volatility of this. So the request before the meeting was that it be 100%, that every contractor and subcontractor, 100% of the labor had to be union provided. Then there was a side letter that the developer put forth that said, look, I'm not going to commit to that, but I will commit to paying, at least the union wage. And then there was discussion, again, all behind the scenes that, well, maybe the demand had now dropped to 50%. And since then, I honestly don't know what the demand is because I'm not directly in the loop. So it's a little bit of a moving target from my perspective. I think you're on mute, Joe, if you're talking.
I was 6 screens away. I'm unmuted now. I think we had another question from Molly next.
My question is more about the public safety continuity plan. From what I read in 7 days was that there is quite a time lag or process to get officers up and running, and so it sounds as if the council decided really not even to add any more. Is that correct?
That is correct, Molly. At this time, given the cap, the police department will not be, in essence, sponsoring. That's what happens is, potentially candidates come forward, they're pre-screened. If they meet certain criteria and desire, they are basically advanced to the police academy, which is, an in-person in Bradford, Vermont, over a period of, I believe, 3 months. So it's a fairly extensive process. COVID has also further messed up any hiring in the sense of they have not had in-person training courses, so they've not been moving candidates forward. But yes, Molly, the hiring time is over an extended period, and at this point, the city is not moving forward with any qualified candidates. The stated concern is that there are 12 plus officers who are up for or retirement eligible this year. Obviously, no one knows with any certainty how many of those will be leaving, but at least the chief has articulated a concern that we could lose some, if not all of those officers. You're on mute again, Joe.
We might have time for a couple more questions. I see 2 more hands up. Saw CX Associates.
Yeah, hi, this is Jamie Hand. Sorry, I don't know how to change that.
Okay.
But I had another question about the union labor piece. And Chip, I think you sort of explained this, but I'm still a little confused. Is the requirement for union labor, is it coming from the city council, or who's actually requiring union labor?
Sorry, that was on me. At this point, there is no request from anyone. I mean, there has not, a little bit, this may be procedural. Would it be possible for a city councilor on Monday to make a motion to amend the amended interstate development agreement to require union labor? Yes. I mean, that is possible, but that motion has not been made. But at this point, the demand came from the AFL-CIO, and I will say certain councilors have publicly stated their position that they will not approve the amended interstate development agreement unless it includes such a provision requiring union labor.
And if I could just add quickly, so I work a bit with a number of mechanical contractors, and I think there's maybe a couple of union mechanical contractors in the state, but I don't think that there are any that are large enough for the scale of this scope so I can't speak to other trades, but with mechanical contractors, I think it would be hard to find Vermont-based companies that could do the work that are union shops.
Thank you. That is, I think, as I mentioned, that is a concern that some others have raised as well.
I can't remember, Liam. Was it Polly that had a hand up next, or Spencer?
It was Spencer.
Thank you.
Yeah, unmute. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I seem to have disappeared, and a lot of people have disappeared from the screen, even people who are talking. So I'm not sure. I haven't had this problem. I Zoom a lot, and I haven't had this problem before.
Oh, it was the switch for this segment of the meeting to back to the webinar mode. So it's just the presenters that are in the panelist view now. So your view has changed. Yeah, unfortunately, you're not able to do the video sharing, I don't think, in this.
Yeah, you should be able to view it, I think, maybe still in gallery as an attendee. I'm not entirely
Well,
sure.
I can't. Usually I at least can get gallery, and I can't get it. I don't know what the problem is.
Right.
In fact, my live picture is gone. And I think I only see about a quarter of the people who are in the meeting. And I don't know, there's no way I can do it on my screen. I can do minimize webinar, but I'm not sure that's going to help.
Yeah, for this, we're just for security reasons moving folks who are not presenting into the attendees list. And this means that your view will be changed significantly as rather than you're on the screen with everybody, you'll be in the attendees list, which means that you're viewing who's going to be speaking rather than seeing everyone all at the same time.
Well, that hasn't been true. I could see Chip, but the other people who spoke, I couldn't see. So I don't know what, I just want to raise that issue. I feel like I'm not even in the meeting here somehow.
Thank you for letting us know.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure why that's going.
Well, the faces you're seeing are all of the folks that are left on our agenda. You know, these are state reps.
Okay.
Yeah, and including Chip and Joan, Grace. So it's a smaller number of people, and then your steering committee. So it doesn't. Yeah, there's another more than a dozen people that are kind of audio only at this point. They're still there listening to you.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think Molly had one more question. I think it might have to be the last question for Chip.
No, I didn't. My question was answered.
Oh, okay. We just forgot to lower your hand. All right. Thank you. All
Thank
right,
you,
thanks a
Joe.
lot, Chip.
And again, anyone has additional questions or wants to please offline, both my email and phone number are publicly available. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you for this opportunity, Joe.
Yeah, thank you, Chip. Thanks for the update. Okay. Next up on the agenda, I guess we're a couple minutes late. Let's see, Tiff Bluemle and Gabrielle Stebbins with our Chittenden 6-5 State House update.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody, for inviting Representative Bluemle and myself. Really great to be here. And we have, there's so much going on that we are tag teaming. So I'm going to explain how we're planning on breaking this out. So I'm going to give a little bit of update about what's going on in my committee. She'll give a little bit of update on what's going on in her committee. And then I'll give an update on some of the bills that we've been introducing. Tiff will then give an update regarding what's going on in other committees. And then I'll just let you know, because you might be curious, like what we're hearing from constituents and sort of the key topic areas of concern. And Tiff, do I have that right so far?
You do. Nice job.
Excellent. Thanks. Okay. And I have like a 1 minute and 2 minutes, so we got to zoom through. So first, for people who haven't like been in the State House, it's really helpful to know that there's this, if you're in the committee of jurisdiction, then you are deep, deep, deep in the policy details. So I'm in House Transportation, so I am your go-to resource if it has to do with like plowing, mowing, railroads, trains, anything related to moving around. Tiff is in a very different committee, touches on many, many different areas. Then there's like Judiciary Committee, there's Health Committee, there's Education Committee. So the reason why I present this to you is just sort of background that the committee of your jurisdiction that you're in is the committee that you take the hours and hours of testimony on. So both Tiff and I are, we have many, many friends in other committees. So if there's an issue that you care about, that you would like to know more about, we can reach out and find out about that. But that does not, we may not be in the day-to-day of what that specific issue is in terms of the policy testimony and discussion. So just a little caveat. Everything does eventually come to what's called the floor. Not sure why they call it that either, but when all 150 of us House representatives come together, we all have to place our votes. And so Tiff and I, if we're not in the committee of jurisdiction, we get to place a vote, and we also get to work with our fellow colleagues. But just a little background in terms of why we talk about certain things, and when we're like, I need to reach out to other people. That's the reason. So a brief update on my committee. The exciting piece is we've had 2 different additional infusions of cash because of COVID. And what that means is that normally when we're trying to figure out what rail trail projects to support, how we're going to get the train up to Montreal and down to Rutland, we don't have to like search as hard for dollars. So it's very exciting. The other piece is myself with several other House Transportation Committee members received many co-sponsors. We got 70 out of 150 co-sponsors to support the Transportation Modernization Act bill, which requires a whole slew of activities that relate to rethinking how we support denser development and downtown development, rethinking where we put when a new project is going for a large permit design review process, not to think only about what does that mean for cars, but what does it mean for pedestrians? What does it mean for bicyclists? Putting more money into electric vehicles, into electric vehicle charging stations, into programs that help low and moderate income Vermonters access electric vehicles, used electric vehicles, just simply better, more efficient vehicles. So an exciting bill, but most of the time we're talking about sort of nuts and bolts transportation. And Tiff, I'm going to pass it on to you.
Wow. Okay. So I'm on the House General and Military Affairs Committee, which is, I think I said the last time I was here, is like this kitchen sink of committees. So you could literally be within one afternoon talking about liquor or lottery regulation, the Adjutant General's report on sexual harassment, eugenics in Vermont, and emergency housing. And so it's a little whiplash every day, but you get a good sense of all the different players in different realms, and it is fascinating. The I guess we passed one big bill out of our committee, which was actually a really important bill. It took 3 weeks to get it out, and it was very controversial, and it related to collective bargaining for school employees' health care benefits. And there was a proposal from the School Board Association to that all school employees, including paraeducators and custodial staff, food service workers, et cetera, that all school employees bear the same cost of health care premiums and out-of-pocket expenses. And this was a collective bargaining bill, and it is, it has now gone to the Senate, but I'm happy to say that the House passed it by a pretty wide margin, wide enough, I think, to be able to survive a veto by the governor. But what all this does is it allows representatives for those employees to really be at the table and bargain. And that felt like a really very important principle to me. And I was relieved that our committee passed it out 10-1-0. A lot of our portfolio.
Can you explain what 10-1-0 means?
It means, 10 in favor, 1 opposed, and 0 abstaining. Thank you, Gabrielle. So a lot of the portfolio in my committee is related to housing. As you may know, the federal government just appropriated $200 million to the state for emergency rental assistance and utility assistance. And it's a lot of money. And unfortunately, it's pretty strictly constrained for those 2 purposes and for only folks who meet certain income thresholds. And it is complicated enough that it will require an outside vendor to actually kind of serve as the intermediary so that the funds can get out the door. The Appropriations Committee has taken this $200 million and it's set aside about $50 million of that, hoping that we, meaning like our federal delegation mostly, can talk the Treasury Department into using the money more flexibly. And $110 million is going to emergency rental assistance and homelessness support. And I think that we could probably expect the portal to be up so people can register in late March or early April. I'm feeling very concerned about, and I've gotten a fair amount of emails about how the position people are in. There's just been this gap between December 15th and now, when people have not had access to rental assistance. And I am hopeful that the State Housing Authority is able to get this online quickly. The governor's recommend also appropriated $20 million to Vermont Housing Conservation Board, which is a huge amount of money. In a one-time appropriation, our committee will be involved in taking testimony about its use, and that's I think will enable us to make further investments that the state made in the wake of COVID with more flexible money to address more longer-term housing needs as well. After 10 years of trying, I think we might actually take up as a committee and pass out of committee a formal apology and commitment to further legislative action to address eugenics, the history of eugenics in this state, and establish a Truth and Reconciliation Council. This is obviously kind of outside the COVID realm, but it has been many years in the making and just missed getting out in the last session. And so we'll be taking testimony in the coming week or two and hope to get that out for a full House vote. I just would say on a broader scale, in the legislature, it's pensions. It's Gabrielle and I talked to several teachers today from the district about this. We're very concerned. We aren't in committees of jurisdiction about that, but the weighting study, which will affect school budgets here, it's a bill I've co-sponsored and would have an effect on Burlington and Winooski in particular. School construction bill, trying to get the fund to reinstate the state's commitment to funding school construction, and I've been very heartened to see data collection as a part of a lot of different bills across the board. I think that that's something that is so long overdue, and it's great to see it woven in as it has been. Sorry, Gabrielle.
No need to be sorry.
Well,
but you might hear the 3-year-old screaming soon. I'll just add, the other things that we've heard from constituents, Tiff touched on, teacher pensions, on a variety of different issues, Burlington High School. We did have a number of meetings in December and January. We were glad to see the $3.5 million appropriated to help Macy's. We were reassured that that would be coming, and we're glad to see that. We're now going through, Tiff mentioned the governor's recommend. What that is the governor has a budget that the administration puts forth, and then the legislature gets to say, we like this, we don't like that, and then there's a back and forth until we finally, hopefully, reach a budget agreement. The other areas that we've really heard from you all on vaccinations, both when can we get them, as well as concerns about them. We've heard about unemployment insurance, as Tiff mentioned, and deep concerns about the data breach and what more are we doing to protect Vermonters from potentially years and years of harm with regards to that data breach. We've heard about UVM cuts. We've heard about, actually, we've had a lot of constituents talk about support for, getting off of fossil fuels with related specifically to transportation. So that's great. I can actually help. We've also heard about Champlain Parkway and decriminalization of various chemicals and plants and F-35s and nuclear delivery mechanisms. And, you know, happy to take some questions. I think next month it might be a little bit more of a listening session. It's a pleasure to be here. If I end up going on to my picture, it's because my 3.5-year-old is making some noise in the background and I need to go and attend to her. And please do keep reaching out. Our emails are Bluemle, and then it's at ledge.state.vt.us and Stebbins at state.ledge.vt.us. But you can also just look us up online. Thanks a lot for the opportunity.
Yeah. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the update. I remembered to unmute this time. Very proud of myself. Well, do we have any time for a question or two from our attendees? We are a little bit past the beginning of the budget update, so maybe we could just take one.
And people can always email as well.
Yeah. Okay. I don't see anyone raising their hand at the moment, so maybe I'm in luck.
Well, and we'd love feedback. I'll just say we'd love feedback on how much information do you want? We've posted in Front Porch Forum. They've kind of been long, it's just hard to know when you know what people need or want. So any advice you have to give us, we're open.
I'll echo that. I've had 2 people say, I go to Front Porch Forum so I can find the handy electrician. Not because I want to read 18 paragraphs from you, Gabrielle. So, but on the other hand, you know, there are folks who really want to read all that. So happy to get feedback. Thank you.
One of our attendees said, thank you for mentioning the Parkway, Champlain Parkway and F-35s. Real-time feedback. Okay, thanks a lot again. I think we are ready to talk to Mike Fisher, and I'm not sure if Jeff was on about the Burlington School District budget.
Thanks, Joe. I think Jeff is running a little late. I think he'll probably join us. And I want to clarify, do I have 15 minutes or are you going to start the forum with Joan and Grace at 8:30?
Oh, I made a mistake there.
Okay.
Here, fix it in real time.
So you want me to do it in like, you want me to do it in like 10 minutes?
It is supposed to be 15 minutes. But yeah.
I'm going to try. I'll see if I can make up the time for all of us. I'm going to try and get through this in 5 minutes and leave time for questions. So first of all, I want to start by saying that it's been a challenging year, very challenging year for the school district. 2 generational challenges in the same year. So COVID hitting and affecting in-person learning is obviously huge. And then finding the PCB contamination at the Burlington High School campus is another generational challenge. And so the school board has worked closely with Superintendent Flanagan, who's been great, and worked with his district staff to weigh the needs of supporting our students and their families in these times with the fact that this is a very difficult year economically for a lot of Burlington taxpayers. And so we kept those 2 things in mind and tried to balance. But I'm gonna, if I can, let's see if I can I share the screen? I can't. Let's see. There we go. Thank you. So I'm gonna just start with the net, I think what people are looking for, which is, okay, what's going to happen? Oh, Commissioner Wick has joined us. Thank you. And so the net is that the proposal is to raise, is this here. The budget proposal is for 95.1 million. And what that means on a per pupil basis is a number called equalized student. So you take a student, and some students require more services, like if they're learning English, or if the high schoolers need more services than an elementary school student. So it's an equalized pupil, and the spending per pupil is only 0.89% higher than it is in the current year. That's in the proposal. However, there are lots of additional costs beyond the per pupil. And you can see here that there's increases to health insurance and wages, and there's significant increase for downtown Burlington High School. That's the renovated Macy's that's going to open up in just, I think it's 2 weeks. Very exciting. But also relocating our Burlington Tech Center programs. I think they're in 6 different locations this year. We're hoping to do it in just 2 locations next year. But the net of this is, because of all these increased costs, the impact to a hypothetical property taxpayer is estimated to be 6.88%. And we know that's a lot. And we know that's a big burden on taxpayers. But I do want to point out that we started this budget process looking at a 12.8% increase. And both the superintendent and the board knew that that was just not tenable for Burlington taxpayers. So as we worked the budget, we got that down all the way to 6.88%, but it is still a large amount. And I absolutely understand that. I think when we're talking about taxes, it's important to understand that there is adjustments done by the state of Vermont based on your household income. So first of all, if you're a renter, you do not pay education tax directly. It's passed to you through your rent by the landlord. But if you do own a home and you have a household income of under $50,000 or under, you're in, and I forget the name of it, but you're in a cohort where your taxes are protected, and it's pretty low, and it's not based on the value of your home. So the hypothetical income payer their taxes would go up, if they're only making $50K for the household, would go up $81. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say only $81. $81 is a lot to a family that's only making $50K. But some other scenarios, if you are making between 50 and like it's 138,000, you get adjustments called income sensitivity. And so you can see some scenarios here based on a house that's appraised at $250,000, which is about the median appraised value in Burlington. So while the tax increase is significant, the impact is reduced for families that don't have as much income. I'd also like to mention that we did work really hard to reduce services or reduce costs and find savings without impacting the services that we're providing to students and their families. So you can see a list here of 12 things that we reduced. There were no one's going to lose their job in the district. Staff have been working crazy, dedicated staff this past year. And we didn't feel it was, and all in service of our students and families. And so we have not reduced any open position. We haven't reduced any positions where someone's in it. There is a reduction of some paraprofessional positions, but these are historically been vacant and kind of reserved in case some student moves into the district that needs a one-on-one para. So over $1.3 million of reductions where we can, looking for pennies in the cushions of the couch, anywhere we can find it, down to reducing copier costs. And interestingly enough, a lot of health insurance utilization, healthcare reduction, because people are actually using their health insurance less because they're sitting at home, like me and Chip sitting in our basements, right? and not going out and getting injured or getting sick. Very surprising to me. The only two additions that the board approved and that actually the Superintendent Flanagan brought forward, one is to increase our program for multilingual liaisons. These are crucial resources that connect with new Americans in our district, new American families, and help to make sure that the families are supporting the students' learning. So they go into their homes and do things like help them register or to make sure that they have connection with their teachers and their guidance counselors. And the multilingual liaisons did an amazing job over the summer dealing with new American families that were pretty isolated during because of COVID. So as part of our goal to address inequities within the district and support our most vulnerable students, we're dedicating $120,000 to expand that program. The other item that we added is we're going to redo our strategic plan for the district, which is 5 years old. And we're going to redo that this summer. So we want to make sure that whatever we come up with, that there is some money that we can actually start to implement or take action on that plan. All right. Mr. Wick, anything that I missed that you want to flavor in?
Mike, I think you have done a wonderful job, and I'll be curious if there are questions, try to answer them, you and I.
Okay, we do have a question if you're ready to take one.
Absolutely.
I'm just curious, in slimming down the paraprofessional positions that apparently have been vacant, how easily can you amend that if students do move into the district and are entitled to a one-to-one? How flexible is the budget for that?
So the superintendent said that they will find a way to pay for that, because any paraprofessional that's mandated, right? So if a student is on what's called an IEP plan, right? Some students have the need that they need a one-on-one, and we are legally bound to give them a one-on-one paraprofessional, that we are going to meet that obligation. And we'll find the money elsewhere in the budget.
Thanks. I think we had one question from Meg.
Hi, Meg.
Hi. So I also have questions about the paraprofessional piece. My understanding kind of historically from the district is that we've trimmed down paras over the years. We no longer have like many general paras, kindergarten support paras, right? And that often paras that are assigned to a student are doing some support in the whole classroom, right? That's been kind of part of the reason they've been able to functionally not have kindergarten paras is there usually is a second adult in those rooms, not always though. So I also know we have a hard time retaining and attracting skilled paraprofessionals and have a hard time filling some positions at all. So I'm curious, what historical positions are those paras? And how many of them are equal to $250,000? So what positions and how many?
So it's a good question, and I want to address what you're talking about over time, what has happened with the paraprofessionals. And you're right, there has been over the years a decrease, and the board at one point cut all the paraprofessional for kindergartens. And I think 2 years ago or a year ago, we restored some of them. So it hasn't always been, it hasn't been a constant decrease. It's been a back and forth. The paraprofessionals that are in the classroom for the classroom are there for that purpose. Paraprofessionals that are dedicated or split between one or two students are there for those students. And they do make a difference having another adult in the room. But at this time, the board did not feel that this was the right year to add more paraprofessionals to the district. I don't know exactly how many para positions that 250K were, but what was told to us by Superintendent Flanagan and his senior director of finance is that all of those were historically kept every year in case a student moved into the district to need them and would need a one-on-one. So that's a lot of money.
That was
as
budgeted, but not spent because those positions were ghost positions, like not actually ever filled
Right.
functional.
It was a contingency. It was a contingency line item.
Oh, wow. Where would I find more information about that?
So there's a budget. I'm not sure if it's out, the full detailed budget. Jeff, do you know? Every year we produce a full line item budget.
I don't believe the positions are on there, like what positions those are, what they're called, right? I've had a hard time finding information about how we are able to retain and fill positions, right? As a general baseline.
Meg, if you want to send us an email, sort of concise as possible with specific questions, we'd be happy to pass it along to the superintendent and he can respond to us and you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure.
Thanks. I think we have time for one more question from Jamie. I changed your name. I think I got it right.
Thank you. I recall hearing a while back, this may have been before the PCBs were found, but that the high school was considering various options for the current site, from like completely constructing a new building to renovating portions or all of the existing building. Has there been decisions made on how that is moving forward, or is that still up in the
It is no decisions have been made. There's still a lot of testing and investigation going on. And I know it's taking much longer than I had anticipated, and it's frustrating, but they are digging in and peeling back layers and trying to find the source of PCBs. And until they really understand what's going on at the site, where the contamination is coming from, how bad it is, we can't start the process of figuring out, can we salvage the building? What would it cost? What would it cost to do a new? So all the how are we going to move forward is all pending figuring out where this contamination is coming from and how bad it is.
So right now, we still don't know what the source of the PCBs.
Correct.
Well, we know some of the sources. We don't know the full extent and to what degree it's leached. I think almost every surface, every material in that high school now has to be tested. And it's obviously so disappointing. It's very expensive. It's really awful, but we have to do it. And we will figure it out, or the professionals who do this testing, and then they'll report to us and we'll be able to share that information with you.
Got it. Thank you.
And I do want to make one more comment. I know we got to go off, but Representative Stebbins, I think, mentioned, or Bluemle, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing it, Tiff said, around the governor and the legislature have put into the budget $3.5 million to pay for the renovation of Macy's into downtown BHS. And that was great partnership. And we're very thankful to the governor for proposing that, and for the House for approving it. And we're waiting for the Senate to approve that. But that is great partnership between Burlington and the state.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we are ready to move to our final agenda item. But sorry for putting the wrong time in there in my quick slide I popped up earlier, but the City Councilor Forum. And our candidates you can find on your ballot. Actually, you can find Jeff on your ballot as well, but he's not running against anyone, so he's going to get 100%. But you can find Grace Ahmed and Joan Shannon for the City Councilor, and they'll be talking to us next. I have both of you. Okay, good. I forgot to put the questions into my little slide deck, so sorry about that. I'll just have to read them. So first, we would like you to introduce yourselves for a few minutes, just to tell us what your platform is and why you wanted to run, that sort of thing. I think I'll start with Joan.
Thank you, Joe. Just want to keep track of time here. I'm Joan Shannon, and I think I know most of you. I have been serving as a city councilor, first in Ward 5 for many years, and then more recently, I became the city councilor for the South District, which is Wards 5 and 6. And I will say that for all of the years that I've served, it has always been exciting, and there has always been something unexpected that I'm dealing with, which I guess is what keeps it fresh, we'll say. I think that I try to bring the collective voice of the South District constituents to the table. Obviously, we don't all agree on pretty much anything. So you have to kind of sort through the opinions and collect the facts from all different sources, from our professional staff, from constituents, and from advocates on either side of any question. And I try to make that evaluation fairly and in consideration of all the information that we have and seek out information that we don't have. I also try to be a problem solver for our community. A lot of people have issues navigating city services, and when something bad happens, they need help. I've helped people whose cars have been broken into, sometimes repeatedly. People who maybe a tree has fallen on the car, and are there any city services that are available to them, or city sewer backing up into the house, or zoning issues. And all of these things, I am not the decision maker for any of them, but I think that one thing I've learned to do pretty well after years of service and understanding how the city works is to be able to direct constituents to the services that they need. And I really believe that the purpose of government is to enhance the lives of community members, and government is here to work for the community. We serve you. So I try to make sure that happens for everyone. Joe, were we supposed to answer the second part of that question, which is how we differentiate ourselves, or is that a second question?
Oh, I thought maybe you would sort of speak to that in this portion.
Okay.
But if you didn't give yourself enough time, probably take another minute.
Really quickly. One of the things I've heard Grace talk about, and I welcome her raising this issue at the table, is that of direct democracy, which I know is important to her. And I do have a different view of that particular issue. I believe in representative democracy. That's not to say that we shouldn't bring some issues to the voters for consideration. There's a lot of things that we do that are very complex, and to put things on the ballot, you don't put 100-page documents on the ballot. You have to sift through that, you can't always have all of that information there for the public to make those decisions. And I believe that there's a purpose for representative democracy. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Grace, we're just starting with the introduction for a few minutes.
Sure thing. My name is Grace Ahmed. I am an artist, a community organizer, a mother of 5. I study at the Vermont Complex Systems Center. I'm running for city council because I believe new voices need to be brought into the conversations that we're now having in the community. I feel like I'm prepared to serve on the city council in a way that I am not prepared to campaign to be on council. I'm not especially good at selling myself. And by my nature, I really can't be. And because it's antithetical to the way that I lead and my strengths. But since I'm here to give an elevator pitch, I will try to describe it. I enter a room with humility and an open mind and an open heart. And I don't work by showing up and being the most acerbic or needing to seem like the most expert voice in the room, which isn't to say I don't have expertise. But I work best when I show up in a way that is quiet and listening to what is said, letting others say things so that I don't need to say them, reinforcing the words of those who need to be heard, and speaking when it is necessary, because a question needs to be asked or a truth needs to be stated, and that will not be spoken if I'm not there. I'm called to speak now because the incumbent does not represent me. And 17 years is long enough for one person to hold political power in our city. And it's time for leadership that knows how to nurture the leadership in others and then step back. I think the primary difference between Councilor Shannon and I is that they support increasing executive power, even more than it has been increasing in the last few years. And I support returning power to the people. The people most impacted by city decisions need to be a real part of the decision-making process. We need to address barriers to participation for all the folks in Ward 5 that we don't see on this call tonight. Do I have all the answers about how to do community outreach and engage all residents in decision-making? No, but I have strategies for listening campaigns and qualitative analysis, and a commitment to working with the community to understand what the barriers to participation are, and then to dismantle those barriers. And for platform, food security and housing security are the most basic of needs for the people of Burlington, and they are my priorities. We're woefully lacking in low-income housing. Rents continue to climb. The hot pandemic housing market is making gentrification faster, threatening to speed up the pricing out of workers who work in the city, in service jobs, in our schools, unable to live in our city, people living on fixed incomes. And the homeless are still waiting for the city to ensure basic sanitation needs. We can do better.
Thanks, Grace. Okay, I did, the screen sharing is kind of awkward, but I'm going to try to share this question if I can quickly. Okay, do you see that? So the first question we were going to ask you, specific question, was that each of you have pledged to transform public safety in the city. What steps do you propose or support to accomplish this in a way that is racially just and sensitive to residents' safety concerns? I'm going to stop sharing, and I suppose we should begin with Joan to keep the order.
Sure. First, I want to say that it's not true that I support increasing executive power. I'm not sure where that came from, but that's not the case. As far as policing, my vision for public safety is not to defund the police, which is the last thread of our social safety net, but rather to refund everything else that has put so much pressure on the last thread of our social safety net. What I see happening in our community is that we really have defunded mental health care. We have defunded housing initiatives and other types of care. And we've created a lot of social problems in the process. And the last person to call when nobody else will come is police. And right now, I know firsthand, having spent the summer trying to help somebody with severe mental health problems, trying to help them get the aid that they need. It's impossible. And the police come because nobody else will. So defunding the police doesn't solve our problems. We need to start investing in things like the cahoots model. And a lot of those who support defunding the police also support the cahoots model in Eugene, Oregon. And that is where there is another organization that provides, they get called to mental health emergencies, and they serve both with the police and can go to calls on their own. But the development of that model didn't involve defunding the police. And certainly if we can solve our other social ills, if we can fund things that help people make their lives work, I do think it may be possible to then defund the police because we won't need those services. But you have to have a plan to get there. And you can't just take away the last thing that we have when you have nothing else put in its place. And those are complex, and they're also regional problems. They need to be addressed not by just city government, but by kind of regional, statewide government, as well as the hospital. We do have a crisis, and it does need to be addressed. And we all need to be coming to the table to address that, and not really blaming the police, who are the only people that still come when called. And I have had parents of children with mental illness call me crying because they fear that were it not for the police, that they would not be alive. So I do also think that there's policing evolves, and we need to do better. We need to continue to train in different ways. I think that the Vermont State Academy certainly needs to change their training model. But we can work on all of those things, not just one thing that really isn't going to solve the problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Grace, same question. I could read it again, probably.
That would be
Probably
great.
should.
Yeah, just for
Okay.
anyone that's
Yeah, I have
joining in.
my pages back. So each of you have pledged to transform public safety in the city. What steps do you propose or support to accomplish this in a way that is racially just and sensitive to residents' safety concerns?
I think that we first need to recognize that not all citizen safety concerns are created equal. The level of fear that has been planted into the community over ending a proactive patrol between 3:30 and 7 a.m. when the lowest call volume of the day is very problematic. But I recognize how difficult it is to disarm fear with logic. And so I'm kind of just going to leave it there. But what we have heard over and over, whether we have ears to hear or not, is that Black people in Burlington are not treated the same by the Burlington police as white people are. This is a non-starter for public safety. It's time to own it. We cannot just say, I'm not racist and move on. We have to fix it. To begin with, we need better police accountability. We need an independent community oversight board with investigatory power and disciplinary power that can address police misconduct as the ACLU recommends. I'm deeply disappointed with the incumbency, the inability to work through a solution to that end, that if there were problems with the proposal that was given, fix it. That's the consensus and the compromise that's needed, not getting others to agree to mayoral oversight alone. Accountability after something has gone wrong is paramount, but we need to hurry along to thinking more about front-end accountability of our public institutions. We need public voice and input in policy strategy and in deciding public safety priorities. I support Chief Murad in the creation of community support officers to divert some calls to service for civilian officers rather than armed police officers, especially for low-level public order issues, and then using the sworn resources in a better way to prevent and respond appropriately to violent crimes that threaten the safety of people in our community. I'm interested in exploring models for mobile health care, like Joan mentioned, for those who are experiencing issues that the police aren't sufficiently trained for. My understanding from Chief Murad is that that is not a high number of call volume. And so the utility of a program like that might be limited, but very interesting models for sure. And at the root, public safety is about a lot more than policing or not policing. It's really, to me, about creating a sense of community where we trust in each other to watch out for each other and to provide help when our people in our community need it. So I'm very interested in building on successful pilot programs like the Is Good, which was a program in the Isham Street neighborhood where community members gardened together, and crime rates and call volumes to the police went down, and that community program was credited because of the way that it built community and gave people ownership over their neighborhood. And then gardening in particular is great for environmental stewardship and creating pathways that are good and safe for pedestrians, and it can be part of having our bikeable, walkable city. So when I talk about transforming public safety, it's some of those very local solutions that are based on us building community with each other and safety with each other. I think there's all kinds of anecdotal stuff, and Joan brings some interesting ones, but I'm gonna leave you with some from friends of mine who are not white. They do not feel safe calling the police if their child is having an issue, because maybe the police are gonna show up and make things worse. And so when you don't feel safe to call the police, who do you call?
Thanks, Grace.
Is there time for rebuttal? Or?
I guess I didn't schedule that in there. Maybe we could do 1 minute.
Okay. Yeah, I think I agree with Grace that ideally we try to reach consensus on these things, like the police oversight body, and I would have loved to do that. I supported the racial justice. I did not support the racial justice resolution, but I did support the idea that the police commission would have a greater role in police oversight. But when it got sent to my committee members produced something that was entirely different than what had been agreed by the council. And because there were two progressives on that committee, which I chaired, they simply outvoted me each time. And if you're not working with people that have a goal of reaching consensus, I don't really know how you do that. And they would not even let me set an end time to the meeting without outvoting me. So things are unfortunately hostile on the council right now, but I do share that goal and think that we should be working towards consensus. I also completely believe in all of the benefits of community building, and I have done lots of community building myself. But, you know, when you have a situation where a man has gone after his wife with a weapon and she is bleeding on the sidewalk, and the community members come around and they do work to protect each other, we still need the police. It doesn't replace that. So yes, we need community, and I believe we need community policing working with us as a community.
Thanks, Joan. Well, since I gave you an opportunity to add a little bit more there, I guess, would you like to add anything else, Grace? Oh, sorry, I forgot to tell you to unmute. I was looking away. Got you now. Okay.
Community policing sounds nice because it has the word community in it. Community policing is broken windows policing. It is a way of dealing with law enforcement that we know causes racial disparity. You can talk about we shouldn't get rid of the police. I didn't say we should get rid of the police. I don't think at any point I've said that. I said that we need to get rid of racism in our police force.
Thank you, Grace. Okay, I'm going to move on to the second question, which is actually quite different, but we'll change of pace. I'm going to try to share again if I can do it quickly. How's that? Am I sharing the second question? In your opinion, how can the city council play a role in turning the demolished mall site into something that benefits all Burlington residents? I guess we wrote this question a little bit before the events of the last week or so, but I think it's still pretty relevant because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think this time I will start with Grace for this question.
Sure. I think especially given sort of how it's developed, I have less to say about this. I mean, the council gave us this undeveloped mall in the first place, so they had a role in that. I think in the short term, they're making the right decision to delay a vote to give the AFL-CIO a chance to try to negotiate and see if there's a way that we can get union workers on these jobs. I think that even failing a full commitment to union workers, there's other parts of that social good that can still be done. There's no reason just because there's not enough HVAC union members to abandon apprenticeships for women and BIPOC. There's other parts of that we can continue to sort of press on the social good. Beyond the details of the workers during the construction phase, I think the city just needs to continue to hold the developers accountable for doing their part that they've agreed to, the public improvements, which now has been settled in a way that I understand those improvements will happen regardless of how long the project is stalled, which is a positive development for us. What I'd like to see in the mall development is public spaces free indoor public spaces that people in the community can go to, where we can get out of our economic silos and meet other people in the community. And I still would like to see real low income housing incorporated into new development. I think probably the train has already left the yard on negotiating that kind of thing. And so at this point, what the council can do maybe is learn from this development, things about what maybe should be included in future development, because having actual low income housing instead of just this nod to affordable housing where you have 20% of the units that half of the people can afford, really making contracts with developers who are going to create more public good than just tax revenue.
Thanks, Grace. Joan, I'll share this again. Try to do it.
Oh, I'm good.
Okay.
Yes, I think that everything that, almost everything that Grace mentioned is in our current development agreement and has been for a long time. It was actually in the first development agreement. And we wrote the development agreement in a way that really did protect the city. We're protected financially, and we are getting the public benefits that we set out to get when we went into this development agreement. Please keep in mind that the city does not own the site and we don't get to develop it as we please. This is owned by a private developer who has rights according to our zoning ordinance to develop this property. But we wanted certain things. We wanted public benefits. And for that reason, we entered into a development agreement to negotiate these public benefits as part of the project. There is, Grace said that she wanted community indoor space. There's a community room as part of the agreement. There's also a rooftop viewing access point for the community in this agreement. There is affordable housing, 85 affordable housing units. And I know Grace says that she wants it for, lower income, but actually the standard that we have was, I believe, unanimously supported by the city council, because we have to balance, if we hold the bar too high in the requirement for market rate housing, subsidizing some of the housing, the result of that is nothing gets built because the private developer then can't afford to build it. And so we went through a community process, bringing in the stakeholders, most importantly, the housing advocates in our community have supported what we are doing to assure that there is affordable housing in this project and every project in Burlington. There are apprenticeships that is required. It was required in the original development agreement, and it's required in this one. The AFL-CIO has been engaged in this since the very beginning. And strangely, nobody ever, I won't say nobody ever, suggested that this be exclusively for union workers. That was talked about, I think, in 2015. And we realized at that time that if we made a requirement that this was a job only for union workers, we would not have local workers on this job site, or we would have some, but they would be largely out-of-state workers because we don't have enough union workers in Vermont. The market for trades, I think, is pretty good, and they're good paying jobs. So the only about 10% of the tradespeople in Vermont there's about 11,000 tradespeople, I'm told. About 10% of them are unionized, which is consistent with what the union has told us, though they haven't told us what that distribution is, or really the availability for this project, or whether they're actually in Chittenden County. As people have been emailing me in support of union labor, most of them are coming from outside this area. They're coming from Brattleboro, they're coming from New Hampshire, these emails that I'm getting. So I think what's really important is to make sure that we're paying excellent wages, that we are getting excellent benefits for the workers, that we have the apprenticeships that we're looking for, that we have good working conditions, and that we have a local workforce, that we are providing jobs for people in our community. And all of that is there. And we are also making up for the taxes that we didn't get because of the delay caused by the private developer, not by the city council. We're getting those back taxes, and we're still getting our streets built, and we're reconnecting Pine Street and St. Paul Street. And this is, the delay is dangerous. People can walk away from the table during a delay. So I think it's really important that the council move this forward. We have agreement, and at the 11th hour, you cannot in a negotiation move the bar. So you can't start imposing union labor when nobody asked for it for years at the 11th hour. And we didn't ask for it because it doesn't make sense in our market. It's not for the benefit of our community in this case, though I support union labor. And union labor will have an opportunity to bid on this project, not exclusively.
Thanks, Joan. We've gone a little bit over our official end time, but if you'd like, I have a pretty easy question that I could throw back at you about the NPAs. Let's see. Sorry, this is taking so long every time. It's like 5 clicks. So am I sharing now? What do you see as the highest and best role? Oh, I guess I went a little weird with the plurality there. For the city's NPA. I'll start with you again, Joan. We'll alternate.
Okay, thanks. Well, I have been coming to these NPA meetings since before I was on the city council. And I think it's a great place to get together with neighbors and discuss neighborhood issues. It has really evolved over time. And in some ways, I think it's more important than ever. We have ways to connect now that we did not have when the NPAs were created by the Bernie Sanders administration in the 80s. I didn't participate then, but we have social media, we have Front Porch Forum, we have these other ways of communicating. And outside of COVID, this is an environment where we can actually get in the same room. And that has a real advantage and some disadvantages. As many of us, probably most of us on this call, are challenged by having our families and attending evening meetings. And I am so impressed that everybody here, I know you're all dealing with those same challenges and you make it happen. But for a lot of people, you know, they can't, or they're just too exhausted. It's not the priority. And I know it's sometimes frustrating that we can't get more people in the room. But I do think providing the opportunity, a lot of people did come tonight, and having, I think probably your challenge is often finding the topics that the community wants to engage in. I think you're doing a great job, and I can't really, I wish I had some silver bullet for you. I would give it to you if I did. You probably know better than I do, and I'm grateful for you taking it on.
Thanks, Joan. Grace?
Yeah. So I have a couple of things. One is going back to the Bernie Sanders of the 80s NPA, and the sort of original purposes of the NPA was to increase resident participation in the community development block grants. And I I would like to see the NPAs. I know that people are elected from the NPAs to serve on the advisory that does that. But I think getting more low income and moderate income people involved directly in those conversations about how best to serve low income people and how to create community programs for the people that are getting them would be a great goal for the NPA. And I think at this point, the best purpose is to ward by ward hold the NPA is accountable for eliminating barriers to participation because of the function that the NPAs are supposed to have in that direct democracy. And for the South District in particular, we have a real problem with not having any public spaces, so to speak of, anywhere in the district. I used to go to NPA Ward 5 back when it was at Public Works. It has moved where it's been before COVID, it was in a bar. Ward 6 is in a church. Priority one for the South District needs to be getting NPA meetings into public spaces that are welcoming for everybody, regardless of religion or income or health problems like alcoholism. I think it's really a problem where these meetings are happening. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Grace. Okay, well, I only had 3 questions prepared for you tonight. There actually was a hand up earlier. I don't know if it was a mistake, but we probably could take a moment or two. Try not to go past 9 or anything, but there I see Gabrielle.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you. I think it's very challenging. People are juggling so many things, and I just applaud all of you. There are many of you that pull these meetings together. You put a lot of thought and energy into hosting them, and I just, kudos and thank you. You can host a meeting, but you can't force people to join. And if we can find a different venue that might have different feelings to it, that'd be great. But thank you all for the work you're doing, and Joe in your basement and everybody else.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, this format that we have to do to protect public health right now is limiting, but we're definitely looking forward to a future where we can, kind of start over with an appropriate space, and maybe it could even be outdoors sometimes during parts of the year where we can include more of our community, because it's obviously we aren't getting everybody to attend. So I appreciate that.
Thank you for hosting us tonight. This was great, and I appreciate the questions.
Sure. Our pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much. I don't. My dig at spaces is not at the people running NPA meetings. That's really a city problem that we don't have a public space in the South End. But I understand that you guys are all here volunteering your time to public service.
It's definitely good to hear this feedback. I think because we thought about this public works, the school, and other places, and some are definitely more welcoming to the public than others. So yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks again. All right, so again, we'll look forward to our next meeting in March, where we're going to talk about some of those topics and kind of our vision for the future of the NPA for Ward 5 at least. So thanks again for joining tonight. And don't forget to vote. Like I said earlier, you're supposed to send in your ballots by mail if you're doing it that way by like Monday. So get on it, or else you can use the drop boxes. And of course, town meeting day is on the 2nd. So thanks again, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Good night, all.
And everyone.